guest on Time Space Visualiser, played the part of Corporal Bell in 2 of the Jon Pertwee Doctor Who stories. Fernanda Marlowe appeared in The Mind of Evil and The Claws of Axos during Season 8 in 1971, at the height of UNIT's popularity in the series. Hello there, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Banged up, but fine.
It was a very strong time on Doctor Who in 1971. Jon Pertwee was well into the role. UNIT were quite well established. The Earthbound stories were going down really well. And we got to actually to the Mind of Evil, and pops a new UNIT character that we've not seen before. Yeah. How did the part of Corporal Bell come about for you?
It what?
How did the part come about for you?
No, it wasn't. No, it was what it was they realised they had a storyline that was entirely male, apart from Katie. So they made Corporal Bell into a woman, and they decided the Red Guard should be Pixen Lim, and so we were the other 2 girls on the show.
Wow!
And we've been friends ever since.
I haven't seen Katie for a little while now, but she is absolutely full of life. Every time you see her,
she is amazing.
She's utter darling. So you weren't in it, and then all of a sudden they changed the role of the character, and all of a sudden we had a female assistant, effectively, to the brigadier, yes, as it would have been.
I always say I was a sort of walking ASM. If ever they wanted anything done, Corporal Bell had to go and do it, like get the tea or draw the curtains or
the efficiency behind the brigadier, it feels like.
Yes, I don't know. He was so nice. I loved Nick Courtney. He and Jon Pertwee were so naughty.
Lots of hijinks behind the scenes between the 2 of them.
Oh yes, and with Roger Delgado. Lovely.
Which goes back to what I said, actually, with it being the dream team, effectively, at that stage. With it being at the height of its popularity, John, Nick, Roger, Katie, the other regulars in UNIT. The whole show had a really, really warm feel to it. Did that come across behind the scenes as well as it did on screen? Oh yes, it was. I think it's one of the nicest jobs I've ever done, because we rehearsed at Acton, which was a wonderful building because it was masses of different shows rehearsing, but not a lot of technical crew. So it was just us, and we often knew other actors in other shows, and so it really was great fun. And John absolutely led us. He led the whole thing very well. He used to make us, before the take on the studio floor, he used to say, 1, 2, 3, Harry Roy. And we all had to copy it. I don't know why, but we did. He could be known to be a little bit temperamental as well, if things weren't running according to plan.
Well, I didn't see it. I never saw it. I kept up with him, but through Pixen, whose husband wrote it. They were friends of his. So I did see him and his wife a bit afterwards, and I never saw. But then if you're carrying the show, it's a big responsibility and you want it right. And so I would have sympathy with that.
Oh, yes, absolutely. There's a particular line in The Claws of Axos that always makes me chuckle. Can you tell us a little bit about how that came about?
It's Mind of Evil, I think. I think it's Mind of Evil.
It's the weather one with the Claws of Axos. The weather one,
yeah. Well, that was because they went filming in Kent on the 2nd of May, I think it was, and overnight it snowed. And they hadn't the money not to go on filming, and there was snow everywhere. So I had to say, freak weather conditions over Kent, sir. And Nick Courtney and Jon Pertwee, who were in front of me, turned round on the camera rehearsal and made dreadful faces at me. But on the tape, they didn't. But they were, yes, it was hysterical.
I wouldn't have put it past them doing it on the tape, though, to be honest with you.
Well, I'm probably so frightened I wouldn't have noticed.
But studio time was always quite scarce anyway, because the rehearsal process would last for a little while, and then you'd have a certain amount of time to get the episode in the can. So there would always be an edge of nerves on the show itself anyway, on recording.
Well, we overran on Mind of Evil, on one of them. But I think it's one of the best Doctor Who's of that era. I was looking at it the other day. It really is. It stands up now very well, surprisingly. But,
it's a very good story, Mind of Evil. It's got that sort of espionage feel.
Yes, it has.
And you've got the sort of hijacking of the rocket and all sorts of things going on. It's a proper Earthbound Doctor Who story. 6 parts normally dragged a little, but that story doesn't in any way.
No, it was a bit like a whodunit. You're quite right. It didn't have any of the sort of monsters and things in it. But yes, it was fun.
And did you get along well with Barry Letts? Did
Sorry?
you get along with Barry Letts very well?
Yes, I didn't know him very well, but I've seen him because we've done gigs since. Sadly, he's died, but yes, I think we all went to Dover Castle, and he was one of them. Pixie and I, and he, and I don't know who else was there.
Most of the cast were on location at Dover Castle.
Yeah, I mean Richard Franklin I still see now and then because I've known him. I knew him before Doctor Who. I've known him since we were teenagers. Yes, no, I've kept up with some of them.
And did you, by the sounds of it, you did have a lot of fun working on the show?
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. It was fun. And Pixie was pregnant and she didn't want anyone to know because she thought, it was not popular in those days to do that sort of thing. And her uniform had to be let out. And she swore the lady in the costume department to secrecy. But,
would you have liked to have stayed on and been a more regular character as the?
Oh yes. Yes, I'd have loved it. But they changed because they decided UNIT had run its time, didn't they? Mm-hmm. And so they then went on to much more peculiar things.
They went back to Spacebound episodes, but for me, I think the unit story had at that point it had a good strong season left in it. I think it would have been nice to have seen Corporal Bell stay.
I would have liked it
become a regular.
Because I just had such a nice time because it wasn't that demanding and it was very fun and yeah.
I think these days on Doctor Who and the modern Doctor Who, you've got the Brigadier's daughter, effectively.
Yes.
So you've got the women in the higher powered military roles, which at the time in the 70s, obviously casting any female into those kind of roles was pretty much a no-no, wasn't it?
No.
It's been a lovely just reminiscing. I think you speak very fondly of the series, and I think that comes across very clearly. And whilst it might have been 2 stories, Corporal Bell for me is, as I'm a big John Pertwee fan, Corporal Bell for me popping up in the episodes, I always give a little cheers for Corporal Bell when I see him.
It's so silly because it really was only a cough and a spit. But yes. My children, I showed them. I mean, they're grown up now, but I showed them one of the playbacks of it, and they kept saying, "Is that your real hair?" I said, "Yes, it was my real hair. That's what hair was like in those days." It looked like a Barbie doll.
What got you into acting initially? Was there a bit of
all my family are actors. All of them, yes. My grandparents were actors, and my parents, and I just followed. And I did it because I just thought that's what I would do, and I didn't really understand what I was getting into. And it's only when I got to drama school that I realised that it wasn't just going to the stage door and having fun. It was actually you had to sort of act. And I went too young. I should have gone a bit older. I think I'd have got more out of drama school. But I loved that. I was with a very good year of very nice people. Because a lot of the boys had done national service, so they were older. And so we had quite a mature element to the year, which was rather nice. But yes, and then off I went into rep and on we went.
And where did rep take you? Where did you visit? Where was rep for you?
My first job was Lincoln, which was again a very happy job. I was there for 9 months. Penelope Keith was one of the. I went on for her once when she got flu. But yes, she was, and then Lincoln and Hornchurch, Ipswich, I did quite a lot. And then I did 1 or 2 small tellies. And then I had my children, and I'm not very good at doing 2 things at once. So now I've taken to the paintbrush. I'm a painter now.
And the rest, as they say with Corporal Bell, was a bit of history, wasn't it?
Exactly. But he was so nice, Tim Coombe, because I went to see him. I think his father, who ran Spotlight, had seen me in something and thought I was all right. And so he said, see her. So I went to see Tim Coombe for something quite else. And he said, you're for it. Let's go out to lunch. So we went out to lunch, which was very nice. And then he said, if I do ever get anything, I shall get in touch. And I thought, oh, well, you say that, you know, very kindly. And he did. No, he did.
It was the tradition in those days that if you were associated with a director, you would tend to sort of follow the director effectively into certain things.
I think people did. I mean, people like Mike Leigh, I mean, he had always the same people around him, people like that. But I wasn't in that category. I mean, yes, actually in rep, I worked for somebody called Nancy Poultney in about 3 different reps. I went to do special weeks in places. So yes, it does happen. Because they know that with any luck, you'll learn your lines and won't fall over. And you know that they're a nice director. So it works.
Makes for a more pleasant, or it may presumably for a more pleasant experience for you. Rep certainly, it could be quite the treadmill, couldn't it?
Well, it's terrific teamwork because you haven't really rehearsed enough, and so somehow you've got to get through it. I mean, I remember once I dried totally, and I was having to ask a lot of questions, and this wonderful woman, I've never forgotten her, just said, well, Mrs. Blenkinsop, if you're going to ask me this, and I said, yes, I am. And she just got me through this awful moment. What's her name? I've forgotten, but yes, I was very grateful.
The beauty of live theatre.
Yeah.
It's been lovely reminiscing with you today. Thanks very much for giving us time to chat to us about Corporal Bell. And actually, it's been really interesting to hear about your early theatre as well. Thanks for your time. Really appreciate it.
Not at all. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Bye.